I, a 35-year-old male, was married to Jane, a 32-year-old female, for 7 years before everything went south. Our relationship dynamic was pretty standard on paper. I built my construction company from basically nothing into a successful business with projects all over the state. I started with just me, a used F-150, and enough tools to fill half a garage. The first few years were brutal, 80-hour weeks, sleeping in the truck sometimes to save on gas, driving between sites, eating whatever while bidding on jobs that would barely cover materials. Not trying to flex, but I sacrificed everything to make this happen. I missed my best friend's wedding because we were finishing a commercial project that kept us afloat that year. I worked through pneumonia once because I couldn't afford to lose the client. I reinvested every penny of profit back into better equipment and hiring good people. Meanwhile, Jane didn't work a single day during our marriage. Not one. That was our arrangement. "You focus on your dreams, babe, and I'll take care of the house," she said. It seemed fair at the time. What taking care of the house actually meant was hiring a cleaning service with my money, ordering takeout 4 nights a week, and occasionally throwing dinner parties for networking that somehow only ever included her friends. The most effort she put into our home was redecorating the living room 3 times in 7 years because she got bored with the aesthetic. I wanted her to live her best life, so I made sure she had everything. A brand new Audi, a personal trainer, shopping sprees that would make your credit card melt. Meanwhile, I was wearing the same 5 t-shirts on rotation and driving a car with 100,000 miles because I'm practical. She never stressed about money, and I never complained because I thought that's what you do when you love someone. Our house was nice, not mansion level, but definitely upper middle class suburban with good schools and all that. We had a dog, no kids. From the outside, we were that couple people probably envied, successful, seemingly happy, with all the trappings of a good life. Jane was that girl who always turned heads, charismatic as heck, could walk into any room and have everyone eating out of her hand within 5 minutes. I wasn't jealous, though. I trusted her completely. I worked late most nights. The company was growing fast, and managing multiple construction sites while dealing with clients, contractors, and city permits is no joke. One night, I was at the office around 10 p.m., finishing up some project bids, when my phone buzzed with a text from Brian, a buddy who runs a restaurant downtown. "Hey man, is Jane out of town? 'Cause I swear I just saw her at the Orchid with some dude." The Orchid, clearly not the real name, is this fancy restaurant where you drop $300 minimum on dinner. My stomach dropped. Jane had told me she was staying home that night because she wasn't feeling well. I texted Brian back, "You sure it was her?" He replied, "She was literally 2 tables away from me, and they weren't acting like casual friends, if you know what I mean." I tried to tell myself maybe it was nothing, maybe just a cousin or old friend in town, but the next morning, when I casually asked what she did last night, Jane straight up lied to my face. "Oh, nothing, just watched some Netflix and went to bed early, still feeling kind of crappy." That's when I knew something was up. Look, I'm not one of those guys who goes through his wife's phone or tracks her location. I always thought that kind of stuff was unnecessary and toxic, but now I had a reason to be suspicious. So, that night, after she fell asleep, I checked our shared bank account. At first, everything seemed normal until I spotted a $2,800 charge at the Orchid from 2 days ago. My heart started racing. $2,800, that's like 3 months of car payments. Jane didn't have her own credit card, we shared one account for everything. So, where the heck did this charge come from? I dug deeper. The next day, I grabbed the mail before Jane could see it and found a credit card bill in her name from some bank I'd never even heard of. The balance, over $15,000 spent in just 6 months. $15,000, that's a used car or a decent home theater setup, gone. She'd opened a secret credit card and was spending like crazy. She wasn't just treating herself. The charges were for hotels, restaurants, and expensive gifts. She was spending it on someone else, probably buying this dude presents with my hard-earned cash. So I went deeper and checked her phone records next. Not my proudest moment, but when your spouse is lying to your face, the gloves come off. There was this one number that kept showing up, always late at night or random times during the day. The calls were always deleted from her call history. Amateur move, Jane, but they were still there on the phone bill. I called the number when I knew she wouldn't be around, and it went straight to voicemail. "Hey, you've reached Matt. Leave a message." Matt? Who the heck was Matt? I almost left a message saying, "Hey Matt, this is the guy whose wife you're banging with," but decided to play it smart instead. A quick social media search later and I found him, Matt Stevens, a corporate attorney at one of the big firms downtown. Good-looking dude, I'll give her that. Their connection wasn't obvious on social media. They weren't even friends on Facebook. But once I knew what to look for, I found a few comment exchanges that were a little too friendly. I could have confronted her right then, but I wanted undeniable proof, something she couldn't talk her way out of. I know my way around basic security stuff, so I installed a home security system with cameras in the common areas of our house. Living room, kitchen, front entrance. All perfectly legal since it was my house, too. Nothing in the bedroom or bathrooms because I'm not a total creep. I didn't tell Jane about the new security upgrade. I just installed it while she was at her yoga class, and mentioned offhandedly that we got a good deal on a security package through the company. That night, I also backed up Jane's phone while she was in the shower. Again, not proud of this, but I needed to know what I was dealing with. And what I found wasn't just cheating. It was straight-up calculated betrayal that made me realize I never really knew the woman I married at all. So I'd installed the security cameras and was basically playing detective in my own home. Going full James Bond mode wasn't exactly how I planned to spend my weekends, but it was way cheaper than handing over half my construction business, my house, and my money to a cheating, scheming wife. It didn't take long before the cameras caught everything. Within the first week, Jane brought Matt to our house while I was working late. The absolute audacity of this woman. She brought her side piece into the home I paid for, sat him on the couch I bought, and poured him drinks from the bar I stocked. But here's where it gets really messed up. They weren't just fooling around, they were actively planning how to take me down. The cameras picked up their entire conversation in crystal clear audio. Once we file the papers, we need to ask for at least half the business, Jane told him. Wilson Construction is worth a fortune now. Matt, who I now realized was a divorce attorney and not just some random corporate lawyer, was coaching her on exactly what to say and do. Just keep track of every time he doesn't come home for dinner or misses something because of work. We're building a case that he was emotionally absent, Matt said. And make sure you're the one managing all the social events and house stuff. We need to show you contributed to his success. They were literally planning their strategy to take me for everything I had. Jane wasn't just cheating. She was meticulously plotting how to financially destroy me with her lawyer boyfriend. It was like watching a bad movie, except it was my actual life. I kept watching the footage and gathering evidence for a few more days. She'd tell me she was going to yoga or meeting girlfriends, then I'd watch the security footage of her all dressed up, leaving for her dates. Sometimes, she'd come home and sleep in our bed like nothing happened. The cold calculation of it made me sick. At this point, I decided I needed to step up my investigation. I'd sit in my car, looking all innocent while slouched down with a baseball cap and sunglasses like the world's most obvious spy, outside restaurants where I knew they'd be. Ridiculous? Absolutely. Effective? You bet your butt. Within another week, I had everything I needed. Photos I took myself of Jane and Matt sneaking into hotels together, shout out to the zoom lens I panic bought on Amazon, videos of them having dinner and holding hands like they were a legit couple, and screenshots from their public social media where this Matt was flexing about buying her gifts like a $5,000 bracelet and designer bags. The most infuriating part? It looked like this had been going on for almost a year while I was working my butt off, expanding my business into 2 new counties. My wife was busy test driving her replacement husband. But wait, it gets better. One night, I remotely accessed the security camera while at a job site and saw Jane going through my office. She was taking photos of my business documents, contracts, client lists, everything. She even found where I kept my passwords and took pictures of those too. When I confronted her about it later, casually, like, "Hey, were you looking for something in my office?" She gave me some nonsense about looking for insurance papers. I just nodded and played the fool. I knew I needed to protect myself, and fast. So I called Chris, my buddy who happens to be one of the best divorce attorneys in town. Not a dirtbag like Matt, but the kind of lawyer who makes other lawyers nervous. I laid everything out for him, the cheating, the plotting, the evidence I'd gathered. "Well, looks like Jane messed with the wrong guy," Chris said after seeing some of the video clips. "But before we go nuclear, tell me, do you guys have a prenup?" I called my dad after the first meeting with Chris, once I knew exactly what Jane was planning. My old man is not the "I told you so" type, but man, he earned the right to say it this time. "So," I said, after explaining everything, "looks like that prenup you made me get is going to save my butt." There was this long pause on the phone. I could practically hear him trying not to say what he was thinking. "Dad, just say it. You were right." He chuckled, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Son, I've never wanted to be wrong about something so badly in my life." That hit me hard. He wasn't celebrating being right. He was sad that his kid was going through this. Then he switched to full-on dad mode, telling me how he'd gone through something similar with his business partner years ago. Though not with Mom, they're still disgustingly in love after 45 years. The people who try to take what you've built instead of building their own, they're always out there. You just never expect it to be someone you sleep next to every night. So, that's when it hit me. We did have a prenup. Before we got married, my dad, who'd been through an ugly divorce himself, insisted I get Jane to sign one. At the time, my business was just getting off the ground, so she signed it without much pushback. The agreement was clear. What I brought into the marriage and what I built through my business remained mine in case of divorce. When I first brought up the prenup, Jane acted like it was no big deal. We were sitting at this little cafe downtown, and I was nervous as heck about bringing it up. She just shrugged and said, "Sure, whatever. It's just a piece of paper, right?" Then, she immediately started showing me pictures of wedding venues. At the time, my business was just me and 2 other guys with a used truck and some tools. I think she signed it thinking it was meaningless, just humoring my dad's paranoia. The look on her face when she was going through the paperwork, like she was doing me some huge favor, priceless. In hindsight, I'd almost forgotten about it because I never thought I'd need it. Jane had apparently forgotten about it too, or more likely, Matt had convinced her they could get it thrown out. Chris reviewed the prenup and confirmed it was solid. "This is good, but we need to be careful. If she can prove you were emotionally abusive or abandoned the marriage, a judge might invalidate it." That's when we formulated a plan. I'd keep playing dumb. I wouldn't confront Jane yet. I'd let her think her plan was working while Chris and I prepared our counterattack. So, for the next few weeks, I was the model husband on the surface. I came home with flowers randomly. I suggested date nights, which she often declined because she was tired or not feeling well. I made sure I had witnesses to my attempts to make our marriage work. Meanwhile, I moved my important business documents to a secure location, changed all my passwords, opened a separate bank account she didn't know about, and started moving some assets there. All totally legal moves my lawyers said were fine, as long as I disclosed everything during divorce proceedings. I also started documenting every time she lied about her whereabouts, every time she claimed to be at yoga or with friends when she was actually with Matt, every time she withdrew large amounts of cash from our joint account. The whole time, Jane had no idea I was onto her. She thought I was just a clueless husband working too much to notice her affair. She thought I was an easy mark. Well, she thought wrong. Then, one day, after about a month of gathering evidence and securing my assets, the cherry on top happened. She left her email open on our computer. There it was, an email to Matt with the subject line "Divorce Strategy." I took screenshots of everything before she noticed. The email laid out their entire plan. She was going to wait until my company finished a major project that would bring in a huge payment. Then she would file for divorce and demand half of everything: my business, my properties, my investments. She even mentioned that they were planning to move to another state once they got their share of my money. That was the final straw. I had everything I needed. Now, it was time to meet with Chris and finalize our counter strategy. Jane thought she was so clever, but she had no idea what was coming her way. Before I get into what happened next, some of you might ask how Jane could forget about the prenup. That's actually the most interesting part of this whole mess. She didn't exactly forget, she just thought it didn't matter. After going through her emails more thoroughly, I found exchanges between her and Matt where they discussed it. Matt had been pumping her up with legal nonsense like, "Prenups get thrown out all the time, and we'll argue you signed under duress." That was their actual plan. They were going to claim Jane didn't understand what she was signing, that she was pressured into it, that it was unfair and should be invalidated. Jane believed it 100%. She had so much faith in Matt's legal expertise that she didn't even bother to check the prenup herself. She thought she was one step ahead of me, but she had no idea she was about to get absolutely schooled. So, anyway, back to the story. I spent about 6 weeks gathering evidence and preparing with Chris. We had video footage, text messages, emails, bank statements, credit card bills, a mountain of evidence showing the affair and the conspiracy to defraud me in the divorce. Then it finally happened. One evening I came home from work, and Jane was waiting with this weird smirk on her face. "We need to talk," she said, sliding an envelope across the kitchen counter. Inside were divorce papers. I opened them, pretending to be shocked, scanning the documents while she watched for my reaction. The demands were exactly what I'd expected: half my business, alimony for life, our house, even my truck. It was a complete financial massacre on paper. "I'm not happy anymore," she said, like she'd rehearsed it. "I think we both know this isn't working." I nodded slowly, playing my part perfectly. "Can I ask why? Is there someone else?" "No," she lied straight to my face. "I just feel like we've grown apart. You're always working, and I need more from a relationship." I wanted so badly to throw all the evidence in her face right then, but I stuck to the plan. I just nodded again, told her I needed time to process, and went to call my parents for support. Actually called Chris to let him know it was game on. The next few weeks were surreal. We still lived in the same house but barely spoke. Jane started staying out late most nights, not even bothering to lie about where she was anymore. I'd catch her smiling at her phone, probably texting Matt about how their plan was working perfectly. Me? Meanwhile, I was actually working more than ever, closing a huge commercial project that I knew she was waiting to cash in on. She even made a comment one night like, "It's good you're focused on work right now. Finish what you need to finish." The subtext was clear. Finish this project so I can take half the money. Chris and I filed our response to her divorce petition, seemingly agreeing to most terms but asking for time to value the business properly. This bought us the time we needed to complete our strategy. We were basically letting her think she'd won while setting up the perfect trap. The court date was set for about 3 months after she filed. During that time, I strategically moved money between accounts, always documenting everything legally. I closed out the big project and got paid, but immediately reinvested most of it into the business through completely legitimate expenses we'd planned for months. Jane noticed the business account wasn't as flush as she expected and actually confronted me about it. "Where's the money from the West Side project?" she asked one night. "Had to buy new equipment," I said casually. "Business expenses." Her face twitched with anger, but she couldn't really say anything without revealing she'd been monitoring the accounts with divorce in mind. As the court date approached, Jane got increasingly confident. She started moving some of her stuff out, shopping for a new place, even talking about her half of things in the house. She was so sure she'd be rich in a few weeks that she was already spending money she didn't have yet. The night before court, I could barely sleep, not because I was nervous, but because I was so ready for this to be over. I wanted to see her face when everything fell apart. The morning of court, Jane spent 2 hours getting ready, hair, makeup, outfit. She was dressed to impress in clothes I had paid for. Poor little thing had no idea she was dressing up for her last happy day. We drove separately. When I arrived at the courthouse, I saw her standing outside with Matt, all huddled together like a little team. He quickly walked away when he saw me coming. The coward couldn't even face me. Inside the courtroom, Jane sat on one side with him, looking smug as heck. I sat on the other with Chris, calm and ready. Jane kept glancing over at me with this little smile, probably thinking I was about to lose everything. The judge, an older woman with silver hair and a no-nonsense expression, called the court to order. Matt went first, standing up with this dramatic flair like he was in a TV show. "Your Honor, my client has been left financially stranded due to Mr. Wilson's selfish actions. She dedicated years of her life to supporting this business, only to be cast aside when it became successful." I bit my tongue so hard I probably drew blood. Jane hadn't supported anything. She'd never even visited a job site, didn't know the names of a single one of my employees. But in court, he was painting her as this dedicated business partner who sacrificed everything for my success. How hilarious. Jane, she gave up career opportunities. She provided emotional support. She maintained the home so that Mr. Wilson could focus on work, he continued. Then Matt got to the numbers. As compensation for her contributions to the marriage, my client is requesting half of Wilson Construction, valued at approximately $4.2 million. Additionally, the marital home, valued at $850,000, monthly alimony of $11,200, and various other assets, including investment accounts. Jane nodded along, looking at the judge expectantly. The total package would have set me back. It would have effectively bankrupted me and destroyed everything I'd spent my life building. Matt finished with a flourish, like he'd just proven gravity or something. "Your Honor, my client simply wants what's fair after 7 years of partnership." The judge turned to Chris. "Counsel for the respondent, your statement." The bomb was about to drop and Jane had no idea what was coming. The courtroom was dead silent as Chris stood up. Jane was still smirking, mentally spending my money already. Matt stood beside her, looking like a shark in an expensive suit. Chris started flipping casually through his file, then, in the most calm, professional voice, he addressed the judge about some information that was left out of Matt's presentation. The judge nodded for him to proceed. That's when Chris pulled out our prenuptial agreement. He placed it in front of the judge, who started reviewing it. Jane's face went from smug to confused in about 2 seconds. I could see Matt whispering frantically to her, but Chris wasn't done. He mentioned that we had evidence, not only of infidelity but of conspiracy to defraud. The judge looked interested, and Jane looked like she'd started to panic. That's when Chris pulled out the USB drive with all our evidence. The judge allowed the evidence to be presented. As the court clerk set up the video monitor, Jane's face went from confused to panicked. She kept shaking her head and tried to object, saying it was private. The judge shut her down immediately. Then, the video started playing. First, Jane and Matt in our living room, discussing how to get half my business. Then, Jane taking photos of my confidential business documents. Then, more clips of them plotting how to invalidate the prenup. The courtroom was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. With each new clip, Jane sank lower in her chair. Matt's face went from confident to horrified. The judge's expression went from neutral to disgusted, which is a great sign. By the time the evidence presentation was done, Jane was practically hyperventilating, and Matt looked like he was about to throw up. The judge asked Matt if he had any response to this evidence. This is where it got really good. Matt closed his briefcase and told the court his client would be withdrawing her financial claims. Just like that. Jane turned to him in horror, but he wouldn't even look at her. And oh dear, nothing sucks more than your boyfriend bailing in the courtroom. May God help you recover, Jane. She tried to speak, saying they could still invalidate the prenup, but Matt cut her off. With the evidence presented, he knew they didn't stand a chance. The judge had seen enough and was clearly not sympathetic to Jane's case. Then, the judge's ruling was swift and brutal. All financial claims dismissed, prenuptial agreement upheld, divorce granted on grounds of adultery. Jane would walk away with only what the prenup specified, basically her personal belongings, and a small settlement that wouldn't even cover a year's worth of her shopping habits. When the gavel came down, Jane sat there, stunned, like she couldn't process what had just happened. All those months of planning, scheming, and cheating, and in less than an hour, it was all over. She didn't get my business, my house, or the alimony she was counting on. Nothing. As Thanos would say, all that for a drop of blood, except in Jane's case, she didn't even get that. I walked out of that courtroom like a boss. Jane tried to catch up with me in the hallway, tears streaking her makeup, wanting to explain everything. I just kept walking. There was nothing left to say. The aftermath was pretty straightforward. Jane had 2 weeks to move her stuff out of the house. She tried calling me multiple times, switching between crying, apologizing, and threatening me. I blocked her number after the first day when she came to get her things. I made sure to have a couple of friends there as witnesses. She looked terrible, like she hadn't slept in days. Part of me almost felt sorry for her. But then I remembered all the plotting to take everything from me, and any sympathy evaporated. I spent years of my life with that woman. Gave her everything, made sure to keep her comfortable, gave her the love, the care, the gifts, everything a good husband would do. But the moment she decided to disrespect me, disrespect my hard work, she was dead to me. She took her clothes, jewelry, and personal items. She left with about 5 suitcases and a couple of boxes, a far cry from the millions she thought she'd be getting. The funniest part, she had already put a deposit down on a luxury condo, assuming she'd have plenty of money after the divorce. She lost that deposit, of course. She also had racked up massive credit card debt, shopping for her new life, all of which was legally her responsibility. As for Matt, turns out his law firm wasn't too happy when they found out he had been helping a client plan to defraud her spouse. Well, yeah, banging the client too. Chris made sure to send the evidence to the State Bar Association, and last I checked, Matt was facing an ethics investigation. Couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. The whole experience changed me, not going to lie. I'm more cautious now, more guarded with who I trust. But my business is doing better than ever. After the divorce was finalized, I threw my whole focus into work, secured some major new contracts, and expanded into commercial development. I sold our house, couldn't stand to live there anymore with all those memories, bought a smaller place closer to my main office. It's not as fancy, but it's mine. Some friends tried to set me up on dates a few months later. I went on a couple, but I wasn't into it. Trust isn't something I give easily anymore. Maybe someday, but for now, I'm good with focusing on myself and my business. Actually, I'm pretty darn good. Oh, and I got a dog. Named him Pickle. Wasn't a planned addition to my life. 2 months after the divorce was finalized, I was at a job site, checking on a foundation pour, when this mangy little mutt wandered onto the property. He was this weird greenish-brown color from rolling in God knows what, skinny as heck. One of my crew was about to shoo him away when I said I'd handle it. I gave him some of my lunch, and this little dude just sat there, looking at me like I'd handed him the keys to the kingdom. No collar, no chip when I took him to the vet later, and covered in these weird stains that looked like pickle juice, hence the name. Turned out to be some kind of algae from the creek behind the construction site. They eventually wore off, but the name stuck. The vet guessed he was about 2 years old, some mix of terrier and possibly chihuahua and who knows what else. I hadn't planned on keeping him, told myself I was just cleaning him up so he'd have a better chance at the shelter. But that first night, he crawled up on the couch next to me, gave this dramatic sigh like he'd had the hardest day ever, and fell asleep on my leg. That was pretty much it for me. Pickle sleeps in my bed now. Jane would have lost her mind about that. She was always going on about dog boundaries. He comes to work with me most days, riding shotgun in the truck with his head out the window like he owns the road. The clients love him, especially since he's got this weird talent for finding lost tools on job sites. Seriously, the little dude has saved us hours of searching for dropped screws and misplaced measuring tapes. The best part about Pickle, though? He's got zero interest in my bank account. After years of trying to keep up with Jane, there's something refreshing about a relationship where success is measured in belly rubs and tennis balls. Jane tried to reach out 3 months after everything, sending a long email about how she'd changed and realized what she lost. I didn't respond. Some things can't be fixed, and some bridges stay burned for good reason. It's been about 6 months now since the divorce was finalized. I still hear about Jane occasionally through mutual friends. She moved back in with her parents for a while, then got some job at a boutique, a far cry from the wealthy divorcee lifestyle she thought she'd be living. As for me, life goes on. I'm thinking about taking a vacation for the first time in years, somewhere with beaches and no cell service. It's been a year and a half since the divorce now, and I figured I'd share where things stand today. First off, my business has actually grown like crazy since all this went down. It's like once I didn't have Jane draining my bank accounts and mental energy, I could really focus on what matters. We've expanded into 3 new counties and even opened a second office. I've got almost 40 employees now, and we're booked solid with projects for the next year and a half. The revenge part of this story isn't over, though. Remember how I mentioned that my lawyer, Chris, sent evidence to the State Bar Association about Matt's ethics? Well, turns out helping your girlfriend plan to defraud her husband while sleeping with her doesn't look good to the bar. After a lengthy investigation, Matt got his license suspended for 18 months. No idea how he's paying his bills now, but that's not my problem. As for Jane, I've mostly heard things through the grapevine. After moving back with her parents, she apparently tried to reinvent herself as some kind of social media influencer. Started an Instagram account trying to promote boutiques and local businesses. Last I checked, she had maybe 2,000 followers and was desperately trying to get free stuff in exchange for exposure. Pretty sad for someone who used to drop thousands on shopping sprees without thinking. One of the most satisfying developments came through a mutual friend who told me Jane and Matt had tried to rekindle things after all the legal dust settled. They moved in together in some crappy apartment, but it only lasted about 3 months before they had a massive blowout. Turns out when there's no money, their perfect relationship wasn't so perfect after all. Matt apparently cheated on her, shocking I know, with some paralegal from his old firm. Poetry in motion. Last month I finally took that beach vacation I mentioned in my last post. I went to Hawaii for 2 weeks, left my laptop at home, and only checked my work email twice. The business didn't collapse, the world didn't end, and I remembered what it's like to actually relax. Life isn't perfect now, but it's good. I work hard, I'm surrounded by people I trust, and I'm building something meaningful, both in my business and my personal life. And at the end of the day, that's worth more than any amount of money Jane tried to take from me.